I reclaim my time. Stop filibustering. Stop filibustering.
Surrounded by gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately,
so
sir, and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the unapologetically patriotic channel where we put the Constitution, law, and order, and the safety of the American people before political correctness, open border chaos, and the left's endless sympathy for criminals. If you're new here and you care about truth, justice, and restoring sanity in this country, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We don't censor the truth here, we amplify it. Today, we're talking about one of the most infuriating and revealing moments to come out of Congress in a long time. A heated exchange between Democrat Congressman Dan Goldman and Secretary Kristi Noem. An exchange that wasn't just about one case, but about the very soul of our justice system and who it's meant to protect. The name at the center of this clash is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man who, according to law enforcement and immigration officials, is a known member of the violent MS-13 gang. This isn't some random asylum seeker. We're talking about someone identified as part of an international criminal enterprise that's responsible for murders, rapes, drug trafficking, and terror across the United States. But what does Dan Goldman, Democrat from New York, want to do? He wants to bring this guy back into the United States. That's right. Goldman doesn't want justice for the families torn apart by MS-13. He doesn't want consequences for gang members terrorizing our neighborhoods. He wants due process for them.
I now recognize Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go back to Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, Madam Secretary. But my first question for you is a pretty simple one. It's basic civics. Which branch of government does the Constitution give the authority to interpret what the law is, the judiciary or the executive branch?
Sir, going forward, the interpretation of the law, you make the laws in this body. The judicial branch makes sure that they have integrity and they're applied properly to individuals.
So so I'm just going to take that as the judiciary branch. Now, let's focus for a second on what the judiciary branch has said about this case. We know the Supreme Court has said 9-0 that notwithstanding your statements under oath here today, that Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was afforded due process, he was in fact not afforded due process, because then if he were, you would have seen the withholding order that did not permit him to be deported to El Salvador. Now you allege, and I guess the Attorney General alleges, that he's a member of MS-13. That may very well be the case. And if he is, now that that is a foreign terrorist organization, certainly the immigration laws would allow him, and in fact require him, to be deported. I certainly would support that. But the problem that we have here is what you allege, what Ms. Green alleges, what the Attorney General alleges, is not the judiciary. You don't get to decide whether or not he is an MS-13 member. And you don't have to take my word for it, because Judge Wilkinson, a Fourth Circuit judge, very conservative, addressed this argument. He said, the government asserts that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident in its position, it should be assured that position will prevail in proceedings to terminate the withholding of removal order. Will you commit right now to give Mr. Abrego Garcia that process where you can prove your allegation that he is a member of MS-13?
Congressman, that judge that you just quoted did not say he was not a member of MS-13. Who did say that he was a member of MS-13 was law enforcement officers that encountered this individual.
Yeah, he knows
we
that.
had
This is a Fourth Circuit judge. He knows all of what the evidence is, and he's saying if that evidence.
So
you're not going to commit to follow this order. You won't commit to follow this court order.
By the way, he identified
Madam Secretary,
himself.
I reclaim my time. Stop filibustering. Stop filibustering.
Surrounded by gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately,
So he,
sir, and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0? 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately. Why is your opinion better and have more authority than the Supreme Court?
Investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that. This
No.
is investigators and law
That is
enforcement
you
officers
making that
in the case they
determination.
built against him. If you don't
The
trust our law
court
enforcement
has
officers
considered all that.
and
The judge has
investigators,
considered all that,
then
Madam
who do you
Secretary.
trust if you
And
don't
if you would be
trust judges?
quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time, you are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego Garcia is in his home country.
What steps have you taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him. I'm advocating for a court order, Madam Secretary. The court order says that you must take steps to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process, and that's under the Constitution.
Gentleman's
and you
time
should
has
fight too for
expired.
due process.
Goldman argues that Garcia didn't receive due process before being deported, and he cites a Supreme Court decision that ruled 9-0 against how the case was handled. Now, let's pause right there. Of course, due process matters. We believe in the Constitution, too. But what Goldman refuses to admit is this. Due process is not an excuse to endlessly delay deportations, to reverse them based on technicalities, or to invite hardened criminals back into our communities under some phony moral high ground. And let's be clear, the same people crying about due process for a foreign gang member are the ones cheering as American citizens are put on FBI watch lists for showing up at school board meetings or attending rallies. They weaponize the law against patriots and excuse the worst offenders abroad. Goldman goes on this moralistic rant, demanding that Secretary Noem give a sworn commitment to bring Garcia back and facilitate his return to the United States. But let's ask the real question here. Why? Why are Democrats like Dan Goldman bending over backward for a man affiliated with MS-13? Is it compassion? No, it's political theater. It's grandstanding. It's their radical globalist worldview that says everybody has rights in America, except actual Americans. Secretary Noem, to her credit, did not back down. She calmly and firmly explained that Garcia was removed based on thorough investigations, criminal findings, and court rulings. Multiple immigration judges, ICE officers, and law enforcement agencies concluded this man posed a danger to society. But to Dan Goldman, that doesn't matter. Why? Because he wasn't happy with how the process looked on paper. What's even more disgusting is how he dismisses the input of the officers and agents who put their lives on the line every day to keep people like Garcia out of this country. Goldman treats their work like it's irrelevant. And yet, when a liberal activist judge makes a ruling, suddenly it's gospel. Goldman then proceeds to lecture Secretary Noem about civics and the Constitution, as if we don't know our founding document, as if we don't understand the separation of powers. But here's the twist. Goldman doesn't care about the law unless it serves his political narrative. When the law says protect our borders, he ignores it. When the law says deport criminals, he undermines it. But when the law offers even the slimmest loophole to reverse a deportation, he seizes it with both hands. The exchange gets more heated when Secretary Noem tries to explain herself, and Goldman, in a show of arrogance, tells her to be quiet and that he is reclaiming his time. This isn't civility. This isn't oversight. This is a man drunk on power who doesn't want to hear facts. He wants submission. Secretary Noem held her ground. She reminded Goldman that Garcia is now in El Salvador and that if he tries to re-enter the U.S., he will be removed again. That's how it should be. We do not owe foreign criminals a red carpet re-entry into this country, especially not members of MS-13, one of the most savage gangs operating in the Western Hemisphere. Let's talk about MS-13 for a minute, because the media and the left want you to forget who they really are. This is a gang that beheads people with machetes, that rapes and kills teenagers, that runs drug networks and engages in extortion in our own cities, Long Island, Los Angeles, D.C., Baltimore, you name it. And yet, Dan Goldman is up there in Congress fighting not for their victims, not for law enforcement, but for their right to due process and second chance. This is the Democratic Party today, prioritizing criminal aliens over legal immigrants, defending MS-13 while vilifying American patriots, undermining the law while claiming to uphold it. It's a disgrace. Let me ask you this, America. If Goldman is willing to go to bat for a known MS-13 member, how many others are quietly being allowed to stay under this administration? How many criminal cases are being overlooked in the name of equity or compassion? How many Americans have to die before the left wakes up? And let me tell you, this isn't about compassion. It's about control. The left wants a legal system where criminals are protected and the law-abiding are punished, where the government decides who deserves rights based on politics, not principles. That's not America. America is a country of laws, of justice, of borders. And those who endanger us, who violate those borders, do not get a free pass just because the left wants to feel good about themselves. So here's my final message to Dan Goldman. Stop fighting for criminals. Start fighting for your country. And to the American people, if you're tired of seeing your safety, your voice, and your country placed second to the feelings of foreign criminals and radical activists, then speak up. Share this video. Subscribe to America First. Support leaders like Kristi Noem, who still have the spine to say no to this madness. Because if we don't fight now, our country will be unrecognizable in just a few years. This is America First. We don't apologize for defending our people. We don't retreat when a mob comes knocking. We stand our ground, and we fight for this great nation. God bless you. God bless our law enforcement. And God bless the United States of America.